Hello, I'm Dennis Crawford. I'm the second associate chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure of interviewing former Senator Ben Nelson. Senator Nelson needs no introduction, a former two-term governor of Nebraska, former two-term United States Senator from Nebraska. As a Democrat, he won 4 statewide races. Very impressive record. How are you doing today, Senator?
I'm doing well, Dennis. Thank you.
You bet. So you've been out of the Senate now for about 3 months.
3 months.
Okay, and do you miss anything about the Senate?
Well, yes. You know, I miss many of my colleagues. I always joke some more than others. But I don't miss it as much as I thought I would. And part of the reason is I took the job as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, which keeps me more than busy. And I've always been one that looks forward rather than spending time looking backward. I mean, it was time to move on. It was the 4th quarter, the game clock was running. It was time to move on, and so I've moved on. And I have many fond memories of the Senate. I'm disappointed, as I think most Americans are, with the gridlock and the combat that is going on a partisan basis back there. But I found myself so busy right now trying to help state regulation get better in terms of insurance and marketplace, accessibility and affordability of products, insurance products, that I really don't have a lot of time to reminisce. I haven't taken much time to do that.
What are your fondest memories of serving in the United States Senate?
Well, I think they were when we were able to put together groups that got things done. When we had people willing to cross the aisles and work together and accomplish something. One of them was the so-called Gang of 14, where we got judges up or down votes. And another was the Gang of 10 that worked on the energy issues. And but for 9/11, but for 2008, in the case of the financial crisis, but for that, we would have had an energy bill that would have been bipartisan. Most likely, at least would have passed the Senate, and who knows, might have passed the House back in 2008.
Is there anything about the Senate you don't miss now?
Well, the contention. You know, it's contentious. I admire the fact that Senator Schumer has found a way to put people together working on the immigration issue. I think that's a positive step. Regardless of the content of the legislation, the fact that they're willing to talk about it and try to find solutions is a positive step. And I know Senator Schumer very well. As a matter of fact, one of my best personal friends, and we've talked about it. I think he knows how to find that spot where people will try to come together. I worry about the future of the legislation because I think the far right is opposed to doing anything, and so it might be very difficult. But at least they're trying to do something, and that's a positive step.
That's pretty rare in the Senate today. It's very polarized, and there just seems to be an unwillingness to compromise on the part of the Republicans. I mean, before the Obama administration, there seemed to be room for compromise in the United States Senate, but starting about 4 years ago, the Republicans just aren't willing to deal.
Well, I think it's a combination of things. It's a combination of hyper-partisanship and unlimited super PAC money. And a fear of what will happen in the next Republican primary for Republican candidates. When unlimited money can come in support of your opponent, and you see what happens, there are a lot of folks that are going to be on the Republican side. They're going to be very concerned about what happens to them in the next primary, and then if they show any willingness to work together in a bipartisan way, they're an even bigger target. So until that changes and we move away from the political math that we see way too often, the division and subtraction, and division works in elections. Divide the country, find wedge issues, and divide it down those issues, which in many instances are the least important issues, but they're social issues that are in terms of the country moving forward. That doesn't mean that they're not important in people's minds, but it's about something other than governing. It's about something other than legislating. It's about making statements and dividing. I've always thought that we're better off when we have the other math, addition and multiplication, where we reach out and we bring more people together and we find solutions rather than drive people to the ideological extremes and then watch them do battle. Because that's pretty much what we've been seeing recently in American politics.
The decision by the Supreme Court and Citizens United in 2010 created an entirely new and dysfunctional political campaign finance system that would never been created by a legislative body. And it's just opened up the floodgates to unlimited money, anonymous money. I think it's had very harmful effects. Is there anything we can do as citizens about this terrible decision in Citizens United?
No, I think there isn't really anything we can do unless the Supreme Court modifies that decision with future decisions. It will go down in history, in my mind, as one of the worst cases and decisions that any Supreme Court has ever made, apart from some of the earlier decisions, let's say, about slavery and the like. But in modern times, I don't think we've had anything that would even resemble that kind of a decision. And it was engineered by the court, by an activist court, to my chagrin, because each and every one of those that I interviewed promised that they wouldn't be an activist. But it was judicial activism through and through to find a result and then have a result in mind, find a case, and then decide that way to open up the floodgates to all the money. Now, what has it done? It's created an empire for the Koch brothers, Americans for Prosperity. Now, in addition to wanting to be able to influence the outcome of elections with unlimited amounts of money, now, it's reported in the news in the last couple of days that they want to buy a large number of our newspapers. And obviously, with their intent, it's not to make money with newspapers that aren't making money. That the Tribune is just coming out of bankruptcy. It's obviously, in my mind, to try to influence political thought through what we've, in the past, that was pretty objective, our newspapers. Maybe a little bit right, a little bit left, but not totally ideological until most recently.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious the Koch brothers' efforts to buy up newspapers is an effort to get their point of view out to the exclusion of the others.
Absolutely.
And their point of view, of course, just represents a narrow top of the economic strata of America, and their economic agenda is not necessarily in sync with the needs of the middle class and the least fortunate among us.
No, they're typically opposed to all taxes. They're libertarians, by their own description. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't think the Republican Party will benefit from the extreme ideology of libertarianism any more than the Democratic Party will. So, ultra-conservative thought and non-government support really puts everybody at risk. And so I think there's a point where people are going to say, enough. I don't know when that is. I don't know when they're going to say enough. I felt at times it was getting harder and harder for me to help protect people from other states from the folks that they sent to Washington. So at some point, the ideology is going to become secondary to let's get things done. But I'm not sure how soon we can expect that to happen.
I think we as Democrats need to get a message out. If you really get down to the Koch brothers and their anointed candidates, I mean, they're on the record as wanting to privatize Medicare.
Sure.
I mean, the Republicans in the Congress have all voted to privatize Medicare. Many Republicans are on record as wanting to privatize Social Security. And I think we as Democrats need to get the record out, and I think once the middle class discovers what their plans are for Social Security, Medicare, taxes, I think they won't vote for them. And I think that this move to the right, this radicalism of the modern Republican Party, is going to make it difficult for them to win the presidency and to regain control of the United States Senate.
Well, it could be. In the meantime, they appear to be solidly in control of the House. And I don't know that that's going to change it anytime soon because of the gerrymandering that went on to create safe seats. That raises a whole different question about how do you go about changing things. Well, I believe it's in Iowa, they have a commission that decides the districts. I think, you know, we're going to have to move away from where partisan gamesmanship in either party can control the destiny of everyone else legislatively. That there's no real place for that, and you can't do it all in the courts all the time. So maybe that some sort of a commission to establish the lines is the way to do it. I went through that with the redistricting when I was governor, and they came to me with a plan. I told them no, and then they had to go back to the drawing board and try to come up with something else. So it just seems to me that there are things that people at the local level can do and should do, and changing the way in which districts are established at the state level as well as at the federal level makes good sense.
I agree. So let's talk about what you've been doing since you left the Senate. Apparently you are now with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. It's my understanding that you are helping with the implementation of Obamacare.
Well, yes, we have a committee of commissioners and staff that are continuing to work under the law to assist Health and Human Services do among other things establish the rules to enforce how the policies are presented and how they're funded. In other words, what the premiums are, as well as what the benefits are under the law in the policies that are filed by the private insurers, the Blue Cross, Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and a whole bunch of other companies that are engaged in this health insurance business. In addition, in the law, I was able to help get the idea of state-based exchanges. I thought the governors ought to have a chance at doing this. I didn't think a federal, national exchange would be preferable than local control over exchanges. That some states have taken the approach, we don't want to do one. Others have said we will do one. Some have said we want a partnership, and some haven't said exactly what they want. Well, because the insurance commissioners are all from the various states, we take no position with respect to which is the better way. But because there are different ways, what we've been doing is trying to support all of those different ways so that the people back home will get the best result that they deserve.
Yeah, the health insurance exchange situation is very interesting. You have these right-wing Republicans that claim to believe in states' rights, refusing to cooperate and setting up a state exchange, and they let the federal government set up the exchange instead, the health insurance exchange. Here in Nebraska, Governor Heinemann, I think it's just political and ideological. He refused to have the state set up a health insurance exchange, and I've talked to some insurance agents I know. The stakeholders in Nebraska were ready to set up an exchange here in Nebraska. They thought Nebraska could run the system pretty well, but Heinemann just put a veto to it, and he's letting the federal government set it up.
Well, we created the law so that you could have local control, and sometimes you have to live with the laws that you pass.
Overall, how is the implementation of Obamacare going in the various states? I mean, the Republicans are alleging that the implementation is going poorly. They're almost gleeful about it. Is the implementation going well, or are there some problems or some obstacles ahead?
Well, I think they're a little premature in declaring the law dead or that it's not working. That's all political talk. It's nothing more than that. No, the law is being implemented. It's a difficult task because of the fact that we have it based on states, but that's our system. And so instead of having a national health care system, which many people would like to have, I understand, many of my friends would like to have, instead of that, we've taken what we have as a private market. It already insures 180 million people, and helping expand to absorb another 30 plus million without losing the private market. And I think that it is going about as well as a very major piece of legislation can when it's being implemented in a fairly short period of time.
I'm convinced that 10 or 20 years from now, Obamacare will be a success, and a lot of Americans will wonder, how in the world did we ever get along in a system where people didn't have access to health insurance and health care? And I further predict 20 years from now, the Republicans will claim they were always for Obamacare in the first place. They'll point out to the individual mandate coming out of the Heritage Foundation, point out how Governor Romney implemented the individual mandate in Massachusetts. They'll claim they're always for it about 20 years from now. Just mark my words, Senator.
Well, you know, I think you're right. I think there will be a lot more acceptance. The fact that people don't always focus on, and the other side really doesn't talk about it at all, that is the hidden tax of about $50 billion that we're all paying, who those of us who are insured are paying for those who are not insured, uncompensated care. We pay it through higher premiums, we pay it through higher health care costs, which also affects premiums, and that's more than $1,000 per family per year, and that shouldn't be ignored as part of this process. So getting coverage and having health care compensated will benefit not only the providers but all of us directly in a lot of respects and indirectly in many others, but we will benefit from that. In addition, now young people can stay on their parents' plans until they're 26. We know there's been a rough job market for college graduates, so not having been kicked off their parents' plans, they can stay on. They're healthy. Getting healthy people into the pool will benefit everyone, so it's not just those who are sick. You can't have a program that insures just sick people. It just won't, the numbers won't work. But if you do have an insurance plan like we do, and this will provide for, if you will, universal expansion of coverage, it's going to work. In addition to eliminating that, and doing that, you're going to eliminate the lifetime caps. People, the old comment is, blew right through caps with a very serious injury, a very serious illness. Sounds like $1 million is a lot of money until you have one of those incidents that will blow right through that cap. There are instances of that. So there will be many, many benefits that people will realize in the long term where people are covered. I think that it's better for everyone to have people covered. Instead of waiting until they get sick to get covered, until they go in and get health care at the most expensive rate, and at that point in time, prevention, all these things really go together for a better society.
Absolutely. I mean, Harvard University did a study. 45,000 people die every year due to a lack of health insurance. I mean, I see this as a moral issue. I think we have an immoral healthcare system that already rations care by ability to pay or inability to pay, and I just think it will save lives as well as save money and create a more efficient and more rational healthcare system.
I do too, and you know, there is a group of individuals out there. It's just a group. It's all about them. It's me. What's in it for me? If you are going to get something and it costs me anything, then it's wrong. And that group, and I put the Americans for Prosperity in that group. It's all about them. If you could eliminate all taxes for rich people, they'd be in favor of it. If you said the current system's okay, shouldn't expand Medicaid. Let people find their own health care the way they can without government's interference. Then that's their mantra as well. And it's to me, it's just antithetical to everything I've ever been taught by my parents, everything I've ever learned, of any experience that I've ever had. Why don't we join together and make education affordable as well as available? Why don't we find a way, and we will, to make health care available to everybody, not just those who are well, but those with pre-existing conditions now will have coverage.
That's right. Yeah, it's a very short-sighted philosophy that these billionaires and their followers have. I've traveled in Latin America, and you go to a nice part of town, whether it's in Peru or Mexico or Costa Rica, and every home, every business is surrounded by a tall metal fence with barbed wire at the top. And we don't have a country like that here in the United States of America. You just don't want that. That's totally counterproductive.
It is. It is.
You have to have a growing middle class who has money to spend, consumer confidence to purchase the goods and the services sold by the so-called job creators. One of my concerns about the implementation of Obamacare is Republican obstruction at both the state and the federal level. At the federal level, they could refuse to fund the implementation of the program. Is Republican obstruction of the implementation of Obamacare, is that a real problem or danger?
Oh, it's mostly rhetoric now. I don't think that there's the capacity to obstruct. What is missing is the capacity to help implement. Not wanting to do anything to make it better, make no improvements, because if you keep it bad enough, maybe it'll collapse under its own weight. So it's the absence of support with a law that is now the law of the land. Denial. But I guess, I'm not totally surprised that some of these folks still haven't accepted the outcome of the 2012 presidential election. They never accepted it in 2008 either. So this denial of reality where we are is just ongoing. And if it weren't so, I think, bad, it would be amusing. Sometimes I am amused by the denial of the reality of where we are and where the American people want to go. And if they didn't see that in the last presidential election, I don't know what it's going to take.
I think they're complete denial. I think Fox News and Rush Limbaugh will keep them in denial.
Well, I did talk. I gave a paper, delivered a paper at the policy group down at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and I talked about the influence of the media and the fact that you don't have Walter Cronkite anymore. You have some people who are maybe a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. You have those way off to the left, way off to the right, and so I said, so if you're going to read the Wall Street Journal, maybe you do need to read the Washington Post. And I was going back and forth, and what got me into trouble is I mentioned one of the hosts on one of the programs, and said if you're going to watch or listen to Rush Limbaugh, maybe you ought to watch this person, and that person made me the worst person in the world.
Was that Keith Olbermann?
It was.
I remember that. You called it infotainment.
Yes.
It is infotainment.
Well, he took issue with it, but what I thought was best about it was, I said, you're never going to get your best news at the end of a lengthy rant. And he ranted at me for a solid 2 or 3 minutes and made my point.
What's interesting about that whole episode was, in 2009, about the time you gave that talk, a handful of Republicans offered up some mild criticism of Fox and Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh, and then, of course, just the right wing just went after these elected officials, and so they had to go on the Limbaugh show and the O'Reilly show and grovel and scrape and kiss their rings and beg for forgiveness. So I would say the entertainers in the right-wing media, they run the Republican Party, whereas in your situation, you just ignored them and there was no outcry for you to apologize to the guy. So
no.
I think we have adult, seasoned leadership in our party, whereas in contrast, they're heavily influenced by the likes of Limbaugh and Hannity and Fox News and Rupert Murdoch. It's a really different situation.
I took some consolation in 2 things. Number one, is he had worse, worser, and worst. I made the top. I was the best at being bad. I thought that was good. And then I commented to Joe Lieberman about it, and he says, well, then you're an elite company. He says, I've made it twice. So, you know, it was entertainment.
Indeed. Well, back to the Obamacare. Of course, as we all know, the Medicaid expansion is pending right now in the Nebraska legislature. How do you think the Medicaid expansion would help the state of Nebraska and our uninsured people here in the state?
Well, you know, you're going to pay for their care one way or the other. It's either going to be uncompensated care, if they're not on Medicaid, passed on through the providers to everybody else. That's that part of that uncompensated care. If you get them into the system, the federal government will pay a significant part, more than 90% of the costs. And the question that's been raised, and not just by Governor Heinemann, but others, well, will the federal government keep its promise to pay it in the future? Well, nobody can bind any Congress well into the future, but we have the costs anyway. We either pay them one way or we pay them another way. So if the federal government pulls back, as sometimes it has on Medicaid, and it used to irritate me under their formula that would pull back, but I was going to have all the costs if they didn't participate to some degree. So I start off with either having all those costs right now, counterbalance that against only having 10% of those costs for some period of time. I mean, I don't understand the argument that the federal government's going to pull back and that that's going to make it worse because we're going to pay for their care this way or that way. I don't know. If you find a way where magically you're not going to pay for them, then you would ask the question, well, why would you expand Medicaid? But we are. All of us are. We're going to pay for it through higher insurance premiums and uncompensated care.